And good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives 2, and it's Wednesday night, and that means Mark Kulacz here with us. And it's so glad to have you here, Mark. Mark, I like the way you've got your studio rearranged, and you got some great lighting. You're looking good. How are you?
Thanks for the compliment. It's the same lighting as always. I'm doing great, by the way, and thanks for having me on. The only thing that's changed when I've been on your show before, I've used a camera on a laptop lid which was supposed to be a good MacBook Pro, but the camera just wasn't good. Now I'm using an iPad. The camera is very nice, and now you can actually see things, which is a benefit, I suppose. How are you? How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm good. I've been I've been really stressed out for the past month with after the heart attack and all. But Marcia's doing good. She's back to work.
Good.
Drummer, and she's doing very well. And I'm really encouraged. And I'm oh well, just trying to keep up with everything. Little bit too much stress sometimes.
Yeah.
But some friends came over today. We played music all afternoon. And yeah, I got some gigs coming up. It's nice to get back to the music that I used to play before. What about 4 years ago when I had the bombshell experience of meeting George Webb and for everything since then has been different. We're facing a crisis in this country and a crisis in the world. And you've dropped everything to work on it. I dropped everything.
Hmm.
George has dropped everything. The good folks at Neighborhood News Studio are working on it. We're all, I shouldn't have even started because there's too many people to list that are working very hard for no money to try to figure out what the hell is really going on here. Now, I've seen in the comments that you did a bombshell show today, and I'm looking forward to hearing about that. But I actually have an agenda of my own that I want to start with, if you don't mind.
Please.
And
It-
I want because David Underdown, who I think this is working out pretty cool with you and David alternating Wednesday nights. Well, he's kind of identifying a couple of the parties in what I call the big internal dispute in the government. You started talking about an internal dispute in the government
yeah.
when you've been working on the anthrax and 9/11, and I want to get your thoughts, but it meshes with David's thoughts that we had last week, and he's fleshed it out in his Twitter, where yeah, honestly, the Clinton global initiative seems to be on one side, and the Cheney the Carlyle group seems to be on the other side, and that's real progress for me to be able to look and say, okay, you can't know the ball game unless you know who the players are, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a program. So I mean, to start the program, at least we can say there's this team and this team. But that's his thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts. You develop from where we were last time into the thoughts of where you see the division, and can you name some of the players on each side?
Well, the idea of a potential division is something I started to mull over based upon some uh, executive uh, groups which were developed in the Reagan administration. Actually, even a little bit before the Reagan administration. But when I was, believe it or not, it was of all things, it was trying to do a genuine uh, uh, background and research on what led to Microsoft, on Bill Gates, getting past most of the common conspiracy stuff. I was really trying to read between the lines, and in that process, I found a couple from Hungary that one had worked at the University of Washington and actually seemed to have met, or at least is suggested to have met, Bill Gates when he was 12 years old, maybe even younger, along with Paul Allen, the other co-founder of Microsoft. And this woman's husband was brought in and very rapidly was put into a senior strategic position at Boeing. And we've done some background on Boeing before. Anyways, one thing led to the next, and now I'm following these other individuals because I find it so interesting. And lo and behold, they were part of a strategy group, the future security environment. It had a few different names in under the Reagan administration, and there is like the list of everyone who's anyone in this group. Brzezinski's in the group. The person who's running it is Andrew Marshall, who is running the Office of Net Assessment, appointed there under Nixon. Henry Kissinger was in the group. Many people that you would think of as connected to the Project of New American Century were in this group. It's just kind of like an everyone who's anyone, with nuclear threat initiatives, etc. So how can you just walk away from something like that and not be curious? But the name that really that struck me was one of the key people on all of the boards, right next to Henry Kissinger, was a Dr. Joshua Lederberg, who was a geneticist. What's a geneticist doing between Brzezinski and Lederberg? A consultant? It just seemed odd, and that was kind of the start of what led to this theory, this hypothesis that I've been working on. And the hypothesis was, and we can all recall this, the nature of warfare was changing during the Cold War, John. It went from being always horrible, going out to the field with your bayonets and then going out with your guns, tanks, helicopters, all of the traditional methods, all of the traditional equipment involved in warfare and planning, and then naval warfare, to something. So what's going to be next? And in 1983, out of the state of Washington, nonetheless, was what's a production, a movie called War Games was done. You might have seen it. I'm sure you're familiar with it, with Matthew Broderick, where they showed this computer called Joshua.
I didn't see it. When did it come
out? You have
out?
to watch it. You got to go watch it. It's 40 years old.
Okay.
And you can see the prediction of the future of warfare just being different. Everyone's sitting in a command center launching missiles at each other, and you have an artificial intelligence being relied upon. I think it was starting to be understood in the Reagan administration that there was going to be a change in defense. And I think the defense industry didn't really change fast enough. And I suspect that Kissinger, who was always a biological weapons guy and was always managing that still in his back pocket, ever since he sort of helped move that research into the National Cancer Institute in the 70s, along with Lederberg and probably a few others, started to realize that they had an opportunity to take advantage of the lethargic behavior of the traditional military and maybe do a real takeover with a new military, taking advantage of the new threats. And I think that effort slowly started throughout the late 70s, 1980s, eventually the 1990s, until I think it really went full steam, probably with you can see presidential events. I think the 93 World Trade Center really brought terrorism to the forefront. Suddenly we went from worrying about, is Japan going to invade, to, oh, terrorists could be anywhere. Well, we need to start planning them. We need to change the nature of the military. At the same time, defense spending was going down. It was been ratcheting down for years, and it got very low, especially relative to inflation during the Clinton administration. And all this money is going into all of these other efforts, genetics, surveillance, satellites, etc. Defense Threat Reduction Agency starting to take over some of the military's concerns over nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, etc. Ultimately, there was a crescendo moment, if you will, with September 11th. And I did a couple of shows, John, where I asked my audience, what was September 11th? And I don't know what the right answer is, but the point is that there was no common agreement. And how could such an enormous thing have no explanation? There's no common it just happened, and oh well, we looked at it behind the scenes, and no one's ever going to see what's in the report. this is we're all troubled by this. But looking back on it, and then if you see what happened after September 11th, there was a huge spike in military spending. They finally got more money. And also, you could see, if you look at the verbiage before and after September 11th, many people in Congress, in the government, were farmer people. And before 9/11, they were all talking about anthrax attacks. And even the day after 9/11, they were talking about anthrax attacks. It appears as though some war really went hot starting on September 11th between these two factions, whatever they are. And I think it's not a very clean division. There are agents and double agents all over the place, I suspect. But if you want to divide it at a very, very coarsely granular level, it's probably the Pentagon versus Homeland Security. Traditional defense, future defense. What's Homeland Security? Ransomware, internet security, germs, pandemics, food security, energy security, ballistic missiles, anything and everything that can hurt you and scar you and inconvenience you. And then there's the military over there, with all of their tanks and their helicopters and their airplanes and everything else. And then, of course, there's satellites, etc. So, and then there's a lot of hybrid groups. DTRA is technically defense, but it also has a lot of people who are matrixed into other organizations. It is an extreme. Right after 9/11, Department of Homeland Security gets created. One of the first things Tom Ridge wanted to do, grab the Department of Agriculture, which, of course, most people don't know, includes biological weapons research via food security, such as Plum Island in New York and now the Manhattan, Kansas agro facility. So I don't have a lot of specifics, John. However, a lot of evidence is starting to pile up and a lot of things start to make sense when, instead of viewing it as, American patriots versus, I don't know, someone in the Middle East that doesn't like freedom, or, Americans versus, Israeli business interests. None of those divisions make any sense. They make absolutely no sense. But when you view it as the biggest pool of money in the world spent on any department in any country is U.S. military, well, why wouldn't two groups of people be vying over that? And effectively, whoever owns that has enormous control and influence over banking interests, energy, all around the world. So, of course, it would make sense that someone would vie over that. And 9/11 starts to make more sense. And there's a whole lot more to it when you view, matter of fact, I can lead into the show I did today just by highlighting the front page of a newspaper of the morning of September 11th in 2001. Now, many people probably didn't read the newspaper on the morning of September 11th, 2001. Don't blame them. I wasn't reading the newspaper at all at that time. But on the morning of September 11th, 2001, this is printed, and some people may be reading this at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. But as of 9 o'clock, people are watching television. But that morning newspaper talks about scientists craft a vaccine for AIDS virus.
All right, let me bring this up here.
On the far right-hand corner.
All right.
Now, this isn't just one newspaper. This is nationwide. This is a nationwide news thing. And the way newspaper stories work is they'll come out with a story like on a Tuesday or Wednesday with a small clip, right? Like, wow, that's amazing. And what they do is that means that the following weekend, like in the Newsday section, this is the way it used to work, guys. Some people here may be too young to remember this. Or the weekend after that, there's going to be a huge expose that really gets into all the details. This is kind of like the teaser, right? This is what's coming. So they seated everyone in the right-hand column. Scientists craft a vaccine for AIDS virus. The vaccine for the AIDS virus was announced on the morning of September 11th in 2001. I have not heard anyone else mention this. Now, they didn't say it was 100% effective or anything, but this was going to go big. This was going to go mainstream. And even more fascinating in this article is they talk about this technology using like a synthetic virus and GP120, which is a glycoprotein 120, which is mirrors what one would find, I think, on the outside of the HIV viron, right? Again, I'm not a virologist, so give me a little rope here. And they were going to make the synthetic virus, and then the theory is that, okay, this would cause the body to make antibodies to it, similar to what you're going to be seeing with the Novavax technology. This isn't quite RNA DNA technology, but it's still involving genetically modified viruses being put into people's bodies to cause this isn't direct gene therapy, but this is getting very, very close to it. Now, if that isn't shocking enough, well, what? So how would this be tied into 9/11? Well, if you recall what I said a few moments ago, it appears as though many people were very interested in the threat and the possibility of a bioterror attack. There was a lot of talk about anthrax and smallpox. There were exercises involving smallpox bioterror attacks right up until August of 2001. They were still talking about it in Congress in early September. Biden was in Congress talking about it, reading a letter from none other than Joshua Lederberg, who was communicating directly with Biden about the possibility of a large bioterror attack in a major U.S. city coming up. Day after 9/11, by the way, Biden, one of the first things he's talking about was, we should be worried about anthrax now. Well, why are all these people thinking about a bioterror event? It didn't happen yet. There was no suggestion it was going to happen. All we knew is that, again, official narrative, planes were hijacked, flown into buildings. At least 2,000 people, probably 3,000, have died. Why is everyone thinking about a bioterror event? Which ultimately transpired. It ultimately did happen, almost in the way that they predicted, funny enough. So what did happen a month after 9/11 is it was called Amerithrax. Several letters were written to several officials in the United States government, and they contained anthrax spores in them, white powder, which would identify as anthrax spores. At least 5 people died, maybe 6. Quite a few people were hospitalized, and they targeted the Senate Majority Leaders, Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy, I think. Maybe he's the House Leader. I apologize. I should know that by now.
It Tom Daschle, wasn't it?
It was definitely Daschle. Was Daschle the Congress? It was Daschle and Leahy.
Yeah, Leahy was one of them.
Both Democrats. I'm trying to think of why they targeted both Democrats. Maybe because they were majority leaders. And the rest you can follow what happened. Now, the anthrax attack, it was referred to more and was a bigger part of the storyline as to why the United States needed to invade Iraq again afterwards, because of the allegations of biological weapons development over in Iraq. And well, we know how that went. We know about hundreds of thousands of people, quite a few civilians were killed, as a large number of military personnel. So we're told. I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't mean that in a mean-spirited way, but I don't know what to believe. If it was more or less. By the way, the range of number of people who died in the Iraq War is between 150,000 to 900,000 officially. I don't know how it could be that wide of a range. That's how bad things are. So the Iraq War happened, much transpired. Eventually, someone in one of the Department of Defense infectious disease research facilities, a fellow named last name Hatfill, Hatfill, was suggested to be a potential suspect or a person of interest. And there was a lot. It went on for a few years. This investigation into Hatfill. Did he do it? Didn't he do it? He sued the newspapers for slandering him, etc. Then suddenly, in late 2006, Robert Mueller, director of the FBI, said, you know what? It's no longer Hatfield. It's going to be a guy named Bruce Ivins is now our primary suspect. Now some have said that he was a person of interest beforehand, but I can't find anything to suggest that, to back that up. And then they went full steam into investigating Dr. Bruce Ivins from that point forward. And they say the evidence was piling up. Eventually, he had to check into a psych ward. He was there for about a month. He came out, and then a couple of days later, he committed suicide by using off-the-shelf Tylenol. Not even Tylenol using painkillers, just off-the-shelf Tylenol. This Bruce Ivins was one of the leads in probably worldwide, but definitely in the United States on anthrax technology. He was in his late 50s, probably age 59. He had been working with anthrax and other bacteria for at least 25, 30 years. So I find it hard to believe that someone who knew biological weapons that well couldn't figure out a way to kill himself other than to use off-the-shelf Tylenol, which is one of the most painful ways to die imaginable. Not to mention, he was a person of great faith, and that doesn't add up either, because you're not supposed to commit suicide if you're a Christian. You're going downstairs if that's what you do. Maybe a few exceptions for terminally ill people, but other than that, you just don't do it. You just don't do that. God will find a way and forgive. But one of the main people involved in providing a character witness which was negative to this Bruce Ivins, the person who's now being blamed as the lone wolf who sent out the anthrax letters and caused all of that damage, was a woman named Dr. Nancy Haywood, who, shockingly enough, was one of the main scientists involved in that GP120 vaccine research. Matter of fact, she had been working with Gallo and Fauci since the 1990s. And the worst of her accusations were that she said that Bruce Ivins stole a notebook from her back in University of North Carolina, which he didn't even go to, and that he had an obsession with this Kappa, whatever female sorority group. Apologize to those who are enthusiastic about that. I mean no harm. It's just not something I'm familiar with, the different sororities and male and female. And he spray painted Kappa on her fence. And this was evidence that he had gone unhinged. He was a crazy madman. He was soaked with jealousy that other people were getting the attention. He was the anthrax expert, and that's what caused him to do all of this. The story just doesn't make any sense. And after he died, all the evidence burned and thrown away. That was it. Now, what blows me away is so many parts of this story blow me away. First off, no one has any idea how incredibly well networked the one person. Everyone else seemed to provide very positive character analysis of Dr. Bruce Ivins, except Nancy Haywood. And she didn't accuse him of necessarily, any like having a crush on her or anything like that. It was just odd stuff, little things. But that was used by the very top of the food chain, Robert Mueller, as ways to prove that Bruce Ivins was a madman who had gone off the rails, was unhinged, and was willing to kill incalculable numbers of people with anthrax. Also, he might have had a patent or something like that. Not that Fauci and Gallo and Haywood and like 100 of other people all in this mess also couldn't make money. For some reason, we don't look at that. We just look at one Bruce Ivins. Also, it was said that he had a rocky marriage. He was married for over 30 years. Married his high school sweetheart, one of the first people he met in college, had twins. And meanwhile, Nancy Haywood is on her third marriage. Not that, sometimes marriages don't work out. It's not a judgment call, but it shocks me. As a matter of fact, she was in the newspaper personally, front page, being mentioned with AIDS vaccines on like September 23rd, Washington Post, along with other people, including Gallo, on the AIDS vaccine. No one mentions this. She's described as a character witness regarding her interactions with Bruce Ivins, which were limited, as a graduate student, because supposedly when Bruce Ivins knew her, she was younger. No one ever mentioned, oh, yeah, she's been working with Fauci and Gallo and all of these other individuals for at least 10, 15 years. And, oh, yeah, she was one of the senior people supposedly doing oversight on this GP120 AIDS vaccine, which was announced on the front page of all national newspapers on the morning of September 11th in 2001. John, I'm looking around like, what am I? Why me? Why? It's not me. Why haven't other people put this together? And I guess you could say I didn't until now, because it took swallowing a very, very big black pill to get to this point, to think that any of this was even possible. Anyways, that's all. There's a lot of information I just put out there. But even within those articles, you can see there's divisions. There's divisions all over, John. There's divisions on which method of vaccine is going to be the future. There's divisions between which methods of defense. There's all these different divisions and people who are in one group and actually represent the other group. And I suspect that those divisions and the taste of power and money that this genetic research offers is so big that has more or less led to what we are, the mess that we are stewing in right now. And because of past injustices and potential crimes have not been called out, here we are. If Bruce Ivins was just one of many people who was sadly killed because of one reason or another, someday the creator will deal with that. But in this case, it seems as though everyone around him was part of this AIDS vax research just before 9/11 and is actually still relevant at this very moment. As a matter of fact, this Nancy Haywood, if you haven't heard of her from a while, well, she's still working. She has 400 published works. One of the main people she worked with is a Dr. Murray Gardner. And I don't know if Murray Gardner, white hat, black hat, gray hat, whatever, is the person who worked with Robert Gallo to bring back HIV samples without anyone knowing, in his pocket, from France in the 1980s, and is the mentor of Robert Malone. I can actually find papers of Robert Malone sourcing Nancy Haywood in the 1990s, along with his wife. So he definitely has worked with her. And he's being portrayed as, the truth, the hero, whatever the case. So there's something in me today. I just saw this one more article, and it had already been snowballing. And I just turned this corner and said, this guy's definitely innocent, without any shadow of a doubt. He may have been driven crazy with some type of MK thing, and maybe he did commit suicide. I don't know, but I don't think he did, was responsible for this. And we have these war criminals right now who have been exposing people all over the world to who knows what type of germ, with the end result, not to kill people. This is not about depopulation. It's about the response. And the response is the medicine. The response is the research. Unfortunately, our medical community is one where those who are willing to take the biggest risks and learn the most information get the reward. You cannot learn, you cannot forward science right now fast and aggressively without putting lives on the line. And the people who put lives on the line, the people that are willing to send, South Africans who don't have 401k accounts to their grave with AIDS vaccine research, those are the people that collect data and become more powerful. We reward psychopaths right now in the medical industry. Literally. There's no way to move up. They almost appreciate putting other people at risk. That's the only way to learn. It's not to kill people. If they wanted to kill people, we wouldn't be talking right now. So there's that whole mess. And then in addition to that, there's this war over the future of security and defense. And at this point, I believe both sides, both an old school, a traditional military, if you will, they understand the importance of the virus vaccine research, of the genetic research. They know it's the most powerful thing in the world potentially, so they have an angle. The Homeland Security, the new military, the whatever you want to call it, global view, they have an angle. International Monetary Fund, they're in on it right now because they're willing to fund this stuff. They'll print out all the money they need. They've already done the calculations of how many people died and how much each life is worth and how much data can be generated from each person. That's why IMF and World Bank, you always see them standing right next to the vaccine companies. Is it because the vaccine companies need a loan? No, it's because it's this mess. It's a mess, and I don't know what to do other than to, call people to, to back away and try to find some spiritual guidance and to call it out and to maybe find a way to reconcile things. Now, no one, and I'm not sure it's ever really been seen before like this, and it is off the rails. And I think there's many people in the system who know it's off the rails and are just doing their darndest best to try to maybe nudge it back, knowing full well that they are on the train that's running people over. So it's not as if everyone is a monster here. There's a big, wide spectrum of things. Anyways, I've rambled enough, John. I'm sorry. I just gave you a really radically long answer. Hopefully I didn't lose you or the audience.
It was Daschle and Leahy.
Leahy.
You're correct. And I took the liberty of calling up our friends at Wikipedia to see if I could verify who those people were. And as I did, I kind of scrolled through it and saw that it does look like one thing they're saying in Wikipedia is that this case has not been solved, and it's gotten so old that it looks like it's going to be like the Unabomber. It's not going to be solved, quote unquote. It's going to be solved, and
it will be solved. Now, it may technically, legally never be solved. That's out of our hands. But it will. We will. Who is responsible will be found out. It's going to come out soon, or 100 years from now. It's going to happen, and perhaps people who know are in a position to reveal some more can help out right now, and help everyone out. Help out millions of kids that are going to be injected with stuff because of a belief system that's been built around this medical tyranny, or not. But one way or the other, the truth is going to come out. I do beg that those who have the opportunity are in situations where they can help out, do. But I don't know what will happen right now. Right now, we just need to just lay low and be cool and support each other. This will pass. This will pass.
Now, I just noticed Corky, our good friend Corky Goss in the chat room, near at the top of the chat, pointed out that Youngkin, the victor in the Virginia governorship, was the president of the Carlyle Group. I hadn't known that. I live in Maryland, but we get Virginia ads and stuff, and I gosh, I don't know who this Youngkin is, but anybody but McAuliffe. Anybody but McAuliffe. No, they don't know. We've jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. Carlyle Group running Virginia. But that's it. I mean, they really do. They have this whole Carlyle Group Emerald City up there in Alexandria by the courthouse, where George and I have gone a number of times to report on those trials. And it's like they really do have this kind of imperial presence in Northern Virginia. So, wow. I can't support either side of this. They're fighting their war. It's a war.
There is a war. There's levels of friendly competition, and then there's levels of people get taken out competition.
You have to work together, and then you there's times when you don't work together, and that's just.
Well, not to mention, maybe you've worked independently a lot, given the nature of your job. But many people have had a bad boss. Companies have a bad. Whoever's the governor or the president should not be a matter of of urgent life and death every day.
Yeah.
And maybe some people they're not so good at it. Okay, but there's something wrong. You know,
Well, it's
we're
the
constantly in a
concentration.
state of panic, like, oh, the world's going to end if the wrong person's in the job. It's just okay. So that person stinks, or maybe you don't agree with them, but you know, this there's something really wrong to be thinking about that all the time. It's not healthy, first off, to be in a constant state of panic like that. But so maybe the new governor will be better. I had a friend call me yesterday and asked me what I thought, and I said, you know what? I'm not even sure who's running. I'm not even glued in on the day to day politics right now. I'm really just taking a step back and trying to have a slightly bigger view, more of a meta view, because I'm not sure if any individual election is going to change things right now until awareness comes out
Right.
on this type of 100-year history,
This
give or take.
this is to me, it's like a chess game, and there's the white side and the black side, and each side has their king and their queen and their knights and their rooks and their bishops. But also, each side has a row of pawns out in the front.
Hmm.
And the name of this game is that the pawns have got to get together and rebel against the royalty. If all of us pawns, 16 of us, got together, we could whip up all of those kings and queens and bishops and knights and all of that stuff who are exerting power over us based on ancient money and ill-gotten gains of their great 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 grandfathers, um, and that is what we're facing is just the incredible concentration of wealth, ill-gotten in many cases, and it's being deployed by different sides, different gangs. It's gang warfare, and we the pawns, we the peasants are simply there to be sacrificed in on one side or the other until finally, yay, dun, da, 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 we have a winner. And then it's the all world empire, the one world, new world order forever and ever, ever, with a boot on your neck, as Aldous Huxley said.
I threw out oh, by the way, Aldous Huxley was a big fan of Lederberg. Um,
What's this now?
Aldous Huxley was a very, very big fan of Lederberg. He was
What
one of the inspirations.
and what? Tell me why.
Because Lederberg, as doing his genetic research, had discovered that it's possible to tap into and potentially modify the genome of a living creature through viruses. So Huxley has always been talking about fluidity, about tapping into some bigger power, right, and getting in control of our evolution.
Hmm.
And the geneticists had actually stumbled into that, and I think it actually sort of started with World War II. Also, all of that radiation testing and cancer and so on. It became clear that while they didn't know exactly how to do it, there might have been a way that they could satisfy that craving and curiosity of some of these I don't even know what you want to call them, but people like Aldous Huxley,
Hmm.
and in those occult groups, for lack of a better word, there's an enormous amount of money and curiosity. People are like, hey, this is maybe we could find ways to slow down aging or live longer or whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe that won't ever happen, but it's possible. It could happen if the right things are discovered. I did a little thought experiment a few days ago. And I just posted these numbers, and when these are just one of those little things where it's kind of garbage in a way, but it also highlights something that I don't think is quite appreciated. And that is that people die every year from medical malpractice. Most of it's honest. Doctor just did the bad thing. Nurse picked up the wrong clipboard. It happens. It's terrible.
Cut off the wrong leg.
Sometimes it's because of a bad diagnosis. Sometimes it's because medicine's pushed without the risks being known. Many different reasons. Okay, but the average payout of a medical malpractice is, and it could be anywhere from $1 million to $100 million. It ranges for a variety of things. visibility, etc. But let's just throw it out there, okay? Let's come up with a nice little average. Let's just say if someone dies of medical malpractice, that died because they were used, because they succumbed to being used for some type of medical experimentation against their will. Let's say it's $10 million, okay? That would mean that the United States population is worth $2,900 trillion in lives, which are available to be experimented on, which is worth more than all of our land, all of our food, and all of our resources combined.
Wait a minute. You're saying that people are going to make the calculation of, geez, I need some victims. I mean, I need some guinea pigs.
Yes.
I need some people to test this on.
Yes.
And what's the worst case could happen? If I get hit for $10 million for every 300 million people in this country, well, let me see. Can I afford that? Yeah,
But
yeah.
you can if the World Bank is standing next to you.
Yeah, we can work it out. We can work it out. Okay, go ahead. All right, Harry, go ahead. Drop the bomb.
You can. And it's so odd that the World Bank and IMF are always there, like, we'll do whatever you need to help your currency. As long as you vaccinate people, please. These are and so knowing that our most valuable resources, of course, our lives. We should be asking enormous questions and be harshly critical of the people running our health institutes.
Yes.
Because they have access to more wealth and power than anyone else. You could then the person, my belief about nukes, but let's put that aside and say the person owning the nuke codes doesn't even have that much power. But the person that controls what people are going to be injected with and how they're going to be measured has far more power and could work in a way which is against the interests of just about every single U.S. citizen. And worst case, if it works out, guess what? America is ready to be resettled, everyone. Come on in. We need to be extremely critical and suspicious of the individuals running these institutes. And when I dig in, and this is what I do in my research, and find many of them aren't even U.S. citizens, coming in from Scotland and Australia, who knows where else. It's not a racial thing. Why? Why is someone being brought in from Scotland to run Plum Island Animal Infectious Disease Facility? Please tell me. I would do that job better for half the price as an American and not be interested in killing any Americans in the process. Why do you need to do that? Because he had a veterinary degree? Why did Fauci need to do that? Oh, and by the way, it just so happened that there were multiple lab leaks, including West Nile, out of his lab, which probably found its way into New York City and it was suggested to have arrived through an airplane or some other nonsense like that. We need to be extremely critical and unafraid to criticize and ask questions. Trust the scientists and trust the scientists. No, sorry. There's no more credits available there. They're all going to come under extreme scrutiny, especially the people writing the policies right now. And I'm hopeful that the vast majority of the scientific community, which is legitimate and wants what's best for people and would never dream of doing harm to others, can find it in their souls to step up. Some will be harmed if they do. But those are the people that we really need to. I'm calling out for to take back this machine. We can't do it, but I believe some people can. Was Bruce Ivins one of those people? I think he was more or less minding his own business. I don't think he was ratting anyone out, but he was definitely set up, I believe, to take the fall, to protect this machine. And it's sad. It's sad about that. But what you really wanted to talk about was the division, and I think I can see this division right now. Every time I see Building 7 collapsing, all I can think of is, I think that's where Russia's anthrax stockpile was moved to. And I think they plan to use it in another 1, 2, or 3 weeks. And the silence that you heard on the TV the day of 9/11, the confusion was genuine. People confronting each other in Congress, like, how did you let this happen? You know what we were going to do. How did you let this happen? I think that the war started that day, and and by the way, there were many bacteriologists who died suspiciously within the 2 or 3 months after 9/11. There's a long list. A lot of people, I think, had suspicions of anthrax coming from Russia, that stockpile, finding its way to New York City, where they had 5 floors unidentified in Building 7, right above literally right above where the special police forces were located by Clinton under a sealed presidential directive. And I think that they had leaked that, and I think the military knew what was coming. The military, the Pentagon would have lost all power if 9/11 did not work out like it did. You could see things playing out
Well,
like that.
that's clearly the Carlyle Group side then with Rumsfeld, right?
Well, Rumsfeld's a pharma guy. He's a pharma guy. He was
That's why I keep
upset.
getting confused. I keep getting confused. I think Soros is on this side, and then I'm thinking, wait a minute,
Oh,
no, he's on the other side.
Rumsfeld, Soros. I think they're all more on the Carnegie. How would you say New World side?
The
Yeah,
Eastern establishment.
yeah. It was. I think the Pentagon was very unhappy when they put a pharmaceutical guy, Rumsfeld,
Yeah.
in charge of them. That right in and of it there, people should have been asking questions. What's going on here?
Well, let
Now
me.
he was in battle. I will give this to Rumsfeld. He did go to war. He did put his life on the line. So in those earlier days, he was a soldier. But at some point, a matter of fact, interesting you mentioned Rumsfeld. Um, there's a few weeks after 9/11, and I can find minimal information about this, but I know it did happen. He started a research project called Red Buff, REDBUFF, Red Buff. There's almost nothing written about this. I just have a few pieces of titles that know that this happened. And Donald Rumsfeld in Operation Red Buff wanted to find out. This is all I know, John. What went wrong?
Mm.
And the person that he hired to run that research project was Joshua Lederberg. He directly hired Kissinger's sidekick, the geneticist, to figure out what went wrong. Well, as far as I know, he's not a pilot. He's not involved with terror. Why are you hiring a geneticist again? It just no one ever talks about this stuff, John. Oh, it was the Arabs. It was Mossad. It was this. It was and I'm sure there were international interests involved. I fully believe that it's likely that there was some Israeli intelligence involved because of I think Israel had interests in keeping traditional military well funded. So I'm sure international interests were involved, but it's really not about international interests. It's really about this division within the United States, within the biggest pile of money of any organization in the world, which is what's spent in defense by the United States government. And which is it going to go here? Is it going to go there? And well, the future is definitely going to be genetic research and biological weapons. So there you go.
Well, let's go back to when you said, what's that young scientist name that was the witness that said that was a bad character witness for about Ivins, was the only one that really had anything bad to say. I forgot her name.
Dr. Nancy Hagwood, Higwood.
And Dr. Nancy Hagwood was a specialist in HIV.
Yes, and primates. She runs one of the largest primate labs in the country, or up in Oregon.
So the specific question is, why would she be the person chosen to throw dirt on Mr. Ivins? They needed somebody to muddy his name so that he could at least seem, even if he hadn't been convicted, to have probably been the guy, and people can just let it go with that. They needed him to do that. Why is she the person that they chose to be the Slimer?
Well, first off, she has a trusted connection with Fauci and several others in the National Institutes of Health and the CDC. That's one. Second is I think she was definitely in a position to understand the importance of making sure that this gets blamed on a lone wolf and that we can just sweep it away. That's a second reason. A third one is that her father was a very high-ranking military commander in the Marines. He was a vice president of AMF Corporation and probably had worked professionally with Robert Swan Mueller's father.
Okay, now that gets me to my second question, which is remember that Robert Swan Mueller III was appointed the director of the FBI
Yes,
2 weeks before 9/11.
you bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what given what you just said, and that connection to Lederberg, I mean, this all Mueller has been used to cover up stuff, from the day he was born, probably.
Yes.
I mean, his mother probably gave him a blanket and said, "Here, cover your brother up." I mean, he's been a professional BS cover it up, artist. And
I've heard, by the way, from some people at LaRouche Pack
yeah,
that he's not the brightest bulb on the tree.
he's probably not. He's
But
probably not.
yeah,
But you got to respect. Actually
well,
had an exchange with Mike Billington today, who was 10 years in prison on that BS, income tax trumped up, Mueller, charge. He's like the enforcer for one side or one part of this deep state mess. But now then the question gets back to me to Cheney, because I see Cheney's the guy that said, don't call off, don't call in the fighters, don't call off the drone that's going to hit the Pentagon, right?
oh, I'm so glad you brought up Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Guys in the audience, we did not script this at all. I'm so glad you brought up Dick Cheney because it just so happens that Dick Cheney in 1994 became a one of the board members of Procter and Gamble Industries.
Hmm.
And the person that brought him in and sat next to him was Joshua Lederberg. And what does Procter and Gamble do? Well, they make chemicals, right? They make cleaning products, a lot
Yeah.
of cleaning products, laundry detergents, etc. If you dig into some of the details, they started to buy a lot of companies that were doing genetic research around 2000, 2001, 2002. And something that I talk about on the side of my show, and this is because my wife has chemical sensitivities. We've sort of stumbled into this community of people that are sensitive to the chemicals they use in their environment, in their house. And believe it or not, one of the biggest things that weaken people's immune systems, in addition to food, wireless signals, etc., laundry detergents.
Hmm.
What else? They literally, it's petroleum-based chemicals soaking into people's body 24/7. You sleep in it, you walk around in it, you sweat in it. There is a very high correlation between the use of different types of detergents and cleaning products that weaken the immune systems. And if you want to sell people on emerging pandemics, you need to weaken their immune systems. You need people weak so that they say, "Oh, please, just jab me whatever you want. I'm so desperate. I definitely need it."
That's what I think that they're missing over in Europe, is that, this whole thing with cutting off the gas.
Yes.
Europe is, they've got this perfect storm set up for the winter, where people are going to be cold. They're not going to be able to afford, the heating oil that they need, or the gas that they would normally get is being diverted to other places. And this Nord Stream is being interrupted because the European Union has not allowed it to flow yet, because they want some tax money that people don't necessarily want to cough up. So they're going to choke that until, people, that to me is going to drive people to say, "Hey, I'd like to get that medical, you know,
Intervention.
that medical intervention because I think I might be sick. You know, you go to,
It's
I don't feel
possible.
too well, you know, and the next thing you know, that you've got another one of those cases, quote unquote.
It's possible. Europe has paid a pretty big price. They've also have an aging population, and there's a high correlation of aging. But there's many things in Europe where their food is way healthier than us. Many less GMOs.
Yeah,
Their cleaning products are much better. They don't have in many nations. You can't get high fructose corn syrup like you can here, which is in Mexico. It's a surge in COVID deaths right now
mm,
because of comorbidities with diabetes.
yeah.
I didn't know this, but Mexico actually, some areas of Mexico consume more Coke than the United States. I didn't know that.
It's they sell it like crazy in third world countries, you know, and
Yeah, it's easier to get than water,
yeah, and they can
unfortunately.
always put some fluoride in there too, just to keep everybody calm.
So
Yeah.
Cheney was also very upset. Cheney was mad that a day after 9/11, a week after 9/11, Cheney was running around the White House saying we have to vaccinate every American against smallpox. Like, dude, there's still smoke coming out of the buildings. You know, why are you thinking about this?
So why was he?
I'll let you answer the question. That's where his attention was. That's where Rumsfeld's attention was. That's where
Smallpox.
President Bush's attention was. They're all thinking about germs and bioterror. And it wasn't a bioterror event, at least not initially. Not initially. It wasn't.
So if we're putting Cheney in the Carlyle Group box and Rumsfeld in the Rockefeller box, um, you know, I'm getting confused. My player card is starting to get all lines, you know, too many lines on it. I want simple. I want these guys against these guys. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Again, I have an unpopular opinion that Rockefeller medicine, uh, you know, got more and more corrupt over time.
yeah,
And ultimately, Lederberg became the president of Rockefeller Institutes, Research Institute for like 10 or 15 years. And his best friend was the president of Carnegie Corporation. I sort of see as both. Eventually became under control of the same same
mhm,
group of people. And there were several Rockefeller assassinations in the 70s and 80s and 90s that are underreported. I think Nelson Rockefeller was definitely killed in his hotel room. He was a vice presidential candidate, and what was the Rockefeller institutions more or less became less and less Rockefeller over time, and were replaced by I'll just say something else.
mhm,
And whatever that is, I'm still not really sure. But it seemed to be more and more and more aligned over time with the Carnegie Corporation.
yeah.
Um, eh,
And Carnegie goes, you know, I mean, that you might as well say eugenics when you say Carnegie. I mean,
yeah,
that's like ties us right back into all this crazy virus stuff. So
and eugenics became a word that Dr. Joshua Lederberg created called euphenics, where eugenics is based upon it is you want to breed out the people that you don't want, however you define that, and you want to cause the next generation to inherit certain characteristics. Um, Eugenics, at least as far as the positive side goes, meaning creating people with certain characteristics, is really only has limited success because there's so much unknown still about which of us is created by nature versus nurture. There's still environment. There's a lot of unknowns. And Dr. Francis Collins, who recently resigned, God bless him, he's one of the only people that actually called that out. He actually threw some dirt on this genetic research arena by saying, guys, if you were to find someone with a particular characteristic, positive or negative, you would be really hard pressed to identify, what's a genetic defect versus an environmental defect. And I think he's right about that. Not that, and there's a lot I don't agree about Collins, but George Webb has actually said that he thinks that Collins might have tried his best to balance some of this insanity with a little bit of rationality, and that might be the case. I respect the fact that Colin said, "Okay, I know more of this. I'm out." But this Lederberg created the term of euphenics, which suggests, if you want, two people to mate and their offspring to be taller, you gotta wait 20, 25 years before they can have another kid. This takes forever. Not to mention, if you think you have a genetic defect, not you personally, John, you're amazing, but in general, someone thinks they have a genetic defect, knowing that they can have some kids that may not have it doesn't help them. And what Lederberg was observing was that, there's ways, perhaps using viruses and vaccines, that you can maybe tap into someone's genetics, maybe tweak a few things, maybe causing it to express itself in a certain way. You can maybe make some changes and a little bit of updates on the fly. That's what he was getting into. Hence, Huxley was so fascinated with it.
Mm.
So eugenics, while it's slow and doesn't really help anyone who's currently alive, when you think about it that way, euphenics and getting into the virus and the vaccine research, genetic research, that's a complete game changer. And it even has military applications, maybe making some people stronger, live longer. Maybe you want a set of super soldiers that are stronger and faster.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't live as long, but you know what? They're the soldiers, whatever, right? So maybe,
Orcs.
and maybe you want your enemy to get weaker.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I know this is some research you've done, and I'd like this to be maybe a topic of our next show. I want to do some research of myself on it. You've had some concerns about your father and
Oh,
the nature of the cancer that he died of. And while I certainly can't say it's connected to this, it would be possible, potentially, for someone to have a chronic fatigue or a cancer-causing illness introduced through a pathogen, such as a virus. That's not. It is completely plausible, and it has been done. It has been done. And I'd like to help you on that research. I'm sorry, we talked a few days ago about that, John. I'm
the
sorry I
thing
didn't
is,
prepare notes, but we're going to do it.
this has been, and I'm so grateful for that. You and I had a chance to talk about
We did.
um, the attempts to do what's called virus challenges or vaccine challenges.
Yes. Yeah.
And they did these vaccine challenges on uh, disabled children
Yeah.
that were in some way unable to function in society and just got dumped in these homes, and one of which is called Willowbrook in Staten Island, which became infamous. Well, I read in that story, which comes from the 50s, that this doctor was giving the kids, a small, a moderate, maybe I don't know how you can attenuate a virus, a hepatitis virus, but he had it in and put it in their chocolate milk.
Yeah.
And so they would drink the chocolate milk, and then he would get his data. He was working on this. I'm almost positive as a researcher due to his Army doc history with the Army Research Medical people at Fort Detrick. So it is connected to what your overall work. And now, from the idea that they could give hepatitis A to children in a cup of chocolate milk makes it a lot more plausible and obvious that they would say, well, if we want to get, you know, Tom O'Loughlin, disabled for a month, let's just give him some hepatitis in his lunch. And I really do think that's the most likely explanation for the fact that this normally healthy and very careful man, who was just about to start one of the most important jobs of his career, should suddenly get hit with infectious hepatitis. I'm really think that that's going to open up a lot if we because we can trace that with the Health Alteration Committee under Dulles and Bissell and Helms, and that uh, those people have names. And when we find the doctors that were doing the research on the Hep A uh, vaccine trials, then I think we're going to find that they were using that they were using my dad to get some data from. I would expect.
For the
So
benefit of the
we'll
audience,
look.
when the term challenge trial means that someone's actually exposed to a pathogen. A
Hmm.
lot of the testing that has been done early with the current thing, people are just given the medicine and they see, are they okay? Do they develop symptoms over time? Do they ever actually get the end thing? But they're not actually knowingly or intentionally, whatever, made put into contact with the pathogen that the medicine is supposed to protect them from. There's huge questions about the how to disclose those risks, costs and everything else. I think very few people have actually been challenged with the current pathogen of the current pandemic. That's a whole different ballgame. But they sought out, children, elderly, minorities. Are you black? Are you Puerto Rican? Are you from Thailand? Or maybe Albanian, something, to make you lower cost on the U.S. spectrum of personal value. They would test against these people, which again, this is a point I'm having a really hard time evangelizing this, John. If why would they go through such lengths to find people to expose these new medicines and pathogens to? If it was just a matter of cruelty, they wouldn't need to. And it highlights, and the fact that so many governments, police wardens, and prisons would turn their back to it. It just highlights how much money there is to find people to test on. And if there's that much money available to test on people, why are so many people in the alternative journalist, citizen researcher space continuing to say this is all about depopulation? It completely misses, I think, one of the most fundamental points of understanding what is happening right now. If it was about depopulation, we wouldn't be here. But we are, because the lives are valuable. Every life is valuable, at least from a research angle. You don't just throw those away. You can't test this stuff on monkeys and mice. You need humans. And there's only so many humans out there. And knowing that this is the hottest thing in the world to research. It's the most desired, most tempting, most seductive technology ever presented to any civilization. Knowing how valuable people are, why are they just going to be thrown away? And why do we not have a high level of criticism of the officials that are making the decisions of what people are being injected with, knowing how valuable these lives are? I think everyone here, if you hung in there and listened to me rant this long, please, at every opportunity, try to find new ways to word it on every channel you go to. Why do they want to test on people so bad? Historically, Tuskegee, it's because they need to find humans to test on. They've been using Africa like this for years. I never thought I never thought it was possible that this type of mindset would exist, but it does. It really does, and it's rewarded.
I think it's both, Mark, honestly. And I have to plead guilty as being one of the people that has been on the, hey, this is about depopulation. I've read, I've even got it at hand here, Jim Mars's book, Depopulation, Population Control, how corporate owners are killing us. This book is about 2013, I think. And this is a theme that comes out of eugenics, of course, is that, yeah, let's get rid of the ones that have the bad genes so that, it doesn't, so we can have that perfect society in the future. It's
True.
perfectibility. Humans are not perfect, but humans are smart and humans can perfect themselves. So this is the mission of the secret societies, is to say, well, we're smarter than everybody else, so we're going to perfect the rest of
Right.
them, and cull the herd because we know there's just too many of them. Prince Philip really did say he wanted to come back as a virus, and to eradicate all of these useless eaters that are dirty and populating the planet, and just really an eyesore for the poor princes and dukes and queens of the world. So that was a real thing, and I think it still is. But the research that's being done right now is a different thing, and you have been instrumental in opening my eyes to that, and to the fact that, well, yeah, maybe there is this ultimately, when they figure out, when they finally have the answers to all their questions that they're trying to sort out right now. Is there a gene for people that have green eyes and they're left-handed? Is there a gene for people that have blue eyes and six toes? I mean, all of that stuff, that they may have a lot of answers, but as you have explained to us, they thought when they cracked the double helix and were able to identify the genome, that they were going to be able to play with us like a bunch of Lego blocks and put us together and do whatever they wanted to, and they found they couldn't do it.
No,
And
not
so
yet.
now you have to do all this extra testing to figure out how the other parts are, to try, because they have this in their head, and they've had this ever since they started experimenting, cutting, messing with people's brains, and all those McGill and the nightmare experiments on human beings, at Hartford Hospital, for Christ's sake, where where
Yes.
where Dr. Bissell's father was the president. That kind of creepiness, that's been going on because they have this idea that unless you are wise and enlightened like they are, you're just a piece of cattle. You're just another farm animal. You're just somebody else that happens to be on the planet right now. And I need a research subject, and you're standing right in front of me. So you come with me, sit down here, and do as I tell you. Because I know what's best, and you're just a
Mhm.
peon, and so you're going to do what I want you to do, and I know that this is the right thing to do, and it's going to hurt you, but it won't last long, and then you'll be gone. You
Well,
know,
they believe it.
I believe it.
It's genuine and it's sincere. They
Yeah,
sincerely believe in what they're doing, and that
that's
in that worldview. So
so it's both. Is what I'm saying, is they're fine tuning their ability to kill us.
well,
Kill us selectively.
using individuals for experimentation is. I'm trust me. I'm not saying that it's an affinity or an affection of people. That my point is almost in a way worse. It's like, well, no, you're not really a human. You're a valuable test monkey.
Hmm.
To
Exactly.
depopulate is would almost be better. It's like at least you're viewing me as a man. Now it's no, you're a data point. You're not even really a human. And so it's I'm not suggesting again that it's in a love for people. It's just viewing people as commodities more so than and just than hating them, I guess. But anyways, I hope this has been useful, John. I know that we're making big progress. I know that one way or the other, sooner or later, more and more people are going to come around. I do believe that to seeing this, it's just going to take time because it's pretty radical, I suppose. Wasn't never my intent when I started down this path, but here we are.
Well,
And
you've certainly been helping a lot of people with your show, Housatonic Live and Housatonic Live 2 on YouTube. And you also are archiving on Brighteon, Odyssey, and BitChute, if I have that right.
yes, I haven't archived a Brighteon in a while, but definitely Odyssey and BitChute. Everything goes onto there within 1 to 2 days, sometimes right away. And I do live stream. It's just I just don't have the time to spend with the production. I appreciate people who do high quality production. I focus on just enough production to get the point across, and then putting it out there and making sure I got the data saved. I encourage people to take whatever I've done and to make better versions of it. If you have the skills, please, please spread the word. It's not mine. It's just information. Hopefully it will outlive me. I don't view it as mine. It's the community's.
All right. And well, I second that for all of my material too. We've got to get the word out, and it's not, it's not about egos. It's about information
Correct.
and clarity. And that's what another thing, Mark, that I really appreciate. You've been able to clarify things, and we worked on some really tough stuff tonight, and we got a lot done. I look forward to our next time. And so, thanks again for tonight, and everybody, thanks for being with us. Thanks for participating in the chat. Less government, more fun. Is that the way it goes, Mark?
Yes, well, you know what? If you don't have shared values, less or more government doesn't make a difference, but too much of a difference. But in absence of that, hey, you know what? Let's just go with less, right? Let's have fun. Let's have some fun. How's that? Let's just make
All
the
right.
fun part. Have
Okay.
fun, everyone.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks a lot.